Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the HCT Winter Championship. My name is TJ. I'm joined by the Admiral. That's admirable.
I love how tense you get with the salute. Like, it's over the last few months, it's just getting more and more intense.
It's
the first time,
respect.
it was just like a very gentle, like, motion. As like a nod to this made-up name that y'all called me that, you know, some people still call me by Admiral. And they just omit the B and the E. But lately, it's just been like full intensity. Yeah, it's kind of weird, but I appreciate it.
Well, we're here to get you guys into what we have so happily called the Tiebreaker Tussle. Woo! Woo! And we're going to start things off with HCT versus Ike, but to give you guys a quick explanation of what this is and what it means, because there's 4 spots given to the Winter Championship for Worlds, and 2 players that have already qualified for the World Championship made it into that top 4. We have to do a playoff between the remaining players that aren't already qualified for the World Championship that finished 5th through 8th. That includes Definition, HCT, and Ike. Viper was that 4th player, but of course, he already has that qualification. We then seeded the players based off of their total points throughout the year, and now we have a makeshift 3-player bracket where Definition, the highest seeded player, gets sort of a free win in his quote-unquote initial match.
Yeah, you picture it as a double elimination bracket where Definition has already won a match.
Yes.
That's basically one of the ways to do it, in that the player who drops to the lower bracket also would have faced Viper in that spot. And since Viper is not eligible for that world situation, they also get a win against Viper in that situation. So it is a little bit weird with a 3-player bracket, but we have to eliminate one of the players who is eligible for these 2 remaining slots. And it's unfortunate that it's that way, but that's the way you got to do it.
That's the way you got to do it. That's right. And like you mentioned, we have 2 spots for Worlds to give away. 2 out of these 3 players will get it. And we're going to start things off with Ike versus HCT. And as we saw in the bracket, this is not a match to qualify for the World Championship. This is a match to qualify to a match for the World Championship.
That's right.
So
the player who's out isn't out yet either. They still have one more match left to play.
They still have one more match either. So this is kind of that preliminary match. It's basically like an initial match of the group to set the stage. So Ike versus HCT. Ike has mid-range hunter banned away from him. HCT has control priest banned away from him. And other than that, these lineups are very unique. Ike, the only player in the tournament to bring Odd Paladin, and HCT, one of the only players to bring Malagos Druid. So definitely kind of a weird mix of decks from what we've seen thus far in the Winter Championship.
Yeah, it's one of the matchups where, it's tough to call because so much of it depends on which deck actually lines up against their opponents. I'd say on paper that it's pretty darn close to even, but in the situation, say for instance that Ike gets Odd Paladin against Odd Rogue, that's a very large win for Ike in terms of the on-paper percentages. Say Ike gets even Warlock into Druid, this is one of those ones where now it's really dependent on who actually wins the game, because it is, I'd say quite an even matchup, all things considered. So much of it depends on Ike's threat in the immediacy versus HCT's ability to actually answer a threat in that immediacy, because he's not playing Togwaggle Druid, he's not playing Mechathune Druid, he's not playing Hakar Druid, it's Malagos Druid. And so threat control is a priority for HCT. He has much more liberty to use naturalizes as a defensive tool than he does have to hold on to one as a key piece of a combo.
Yep. And that, I think, is one of the key differences. Also, it just has the option to win the game a lot sooner than any combo Druid deck or any other combo Druid deck could. Now, there's sometimes where the Even Warlock's just floating around 12 health, and you just happen to have a Malagos 2 Moonfires in your hand.
Yeah. Now, that being said, HCT's draw is operating pretty darn close to, the old Mali Druid builds in this matchup, where he's not under pressure in the first couple of turns, so Wild Growth's easy to use. He's got an answer for a Mountain Giant that's going to be coming down for Ike here, so it's not really delaying the Nourish, as it's up to 6 mana at this point. He gets to mix in a Branching Pass to go alongside that. So Ike has definitely got his work cut out for him in the early stages here, where getting a threat online and then starting to punish HCT is concerned. But looking at the specific hand from Ike right now, he does have Mojo Master Zihi in hand. Yes. And it also has copy of Acidic Swamp Ooze. So pretty much anything HCT throws in the mana development segment can be checked by Ike at the moment, and I think that could be his one real factor of getting back into this game after this turn 3 and turn 4 here from HCT.
These are effectively perfect turns from HCT all the way up until this point. Being able to draw cards and naturalize this turn, starting off the Wild Growth, moving into Nourish plus Arcane Tyrant. If he draws the second Arcane Tyrant, then that's a perfect turn, but we see Ike discarding the Mountain Giant, which is a big threat, especially after seeing a naturalize.
Yeah, you're not too concerned with it in Ike's spot because it just wasn't in his hand to begin with, and it's a card at this point you can just account for not drawing for.
Yeah.
At this stage. Burning a card is usually not a big deal unless there is a key centerpiece card in your deck that could potentially get burned away. Outside of that, you just count it as one of those things like, just didn't draw it this game.
Yeah, basically you can account for, unless a game goes to fatigue, that it was the bottom draw in your deck.
Yeah.
Now, it would have been different if it was, say, Blood River Gul'dan, because that's how you stabilize in late game, but it wasn't.
This is going to be an interesting turn here for Ike, where the Zihi looks somewhat appealing, but he does, I think, technically have one more turn to delay the Mojo Master Zihi if he'd like, for two reasons. Number one, because he has coin in hand, and then number two, because he would like HCT to spend as much time as possible setting up for an Ultimate Infestation, only to have it disrupted. The caveat to that would be that HCT gets a chance to unlock a Malfurion or an Alexstrasza turn. But Ultimate Infestation, I think, is the most important one to be disrupting, and the rest of them can be dealt with.
Yeah, and you can see that Ike here decides to not coin out a 6-drop, I think with the intention of saving that coin to cheat out the mana curve a little bit after he plays Mojo Master Zihi.
Right. One of the consequences of Mojo Master Zihi is that when you play it, your opponent actually has initiative on that extra mana pip. And so what that means is you are stuck underdeveloping in comparison to your opponent. So hasn't used coin thus far, and the coin usage now will put him back into a situation where he gets ahead of that curve a bit.
Yeah, and I mean, here, Mojo Master Zihi feels better than in almost any other situation because he's only losing 1 mana crystal, where his opponent is losing effectively 4 once it goes into the following turn.
Yeah, it's taking away a lot of the work that Wild Growth and Nourish did. And forced to trade, of course, is Ike. And HCT had no reaction to the Zihi, this is a bit of trouble here. The swipe will take care of it, but Ike's under the development train at this point. We're looking at a Dread Infernal, we're looking at a Lich King, we're looking at a Bone Mare. This is a lot of stuff that HCT's going to have to do to keep this situation contained. He's 4 turns off of Ultimate Infestation again.
The problem is, though, for Ike is currently he doesn't have a way to sustain his life total. So if HCT can keep chipping away, he's still very healthy. Has Malfurion lined up for next turn. He'll be effectively like a Moonfire away from ending the game on turn 9. So that's a pretty big deal.
Well, scratch that. Now, I do have a bit of an eyebrow raise to the Vulgar Homunculus here, since one of the only ways HCT, I think, is really going to blow Ike out of the water is a Malygos double Moonfire. And I started to say that before the second Moonfire is drawn. Now I'm extremely concerned about it. I think this is a spot where Ike could have played the Acidic Swamp Ooze for a number of reasons. The first one is that it's not checked on board because you have a 7/7 in the way. And number two, it just deals more damage.
Yeah, and if Twig of the World Tree were to come out, he's got the second Ooze lined up for it. So Ike, unbeknownst to him, needs to find a way to get above 12 health, or he will lose the game in 2 turns. And currently does not have a way to do that. It looks like he's going to go Defile, Coin, Dread Infernal, and push some damage.
Yeah, this is Ike is certainly not anticipating losing this way. It is very rare that your opponent is going to have Malygos Moonfire in a 5, 6, 7 card hand without really having drawn that many extra cards. But unless he picks up a Shroom Brewer, which I'm not even certain he would play next turn, this game's over.
Does have 2 in the deck, does have 2 Spellstones. It's whether or not he thinks that HCT would be holding on to that, if he would even play those in the first place. And we didn't really talk about it, but this
+3 attack, can that kill you at like a double Hellfire turn or something? 16, 8, no, you're not dead to double Hellfire. And Ike's certainly going to play Lich King this turn, and that's going to be game. Lich King or Bone Mare, it's going to be one of those 2.
Yep. And Bone Mare it is.
Wow. I think HCT escaped from this one with the strength of the draw at this point, because Ike was set up to really dominate this game. And you see the reaction of Ike, like, well, it goes that way sometimes, and indeed it does. HCT bringing to this tournament just what he considered strong decks. And honestly, I think that's a very good tournament strategy. When you're matched up against the elite of the elite, I don't think you're going to trick them that much. I think you got to bring solid stuff and get some solid draws and have some solid play. and that's HCT 1-0.
One thing we didn't really talk about much was the important decks in the matchup, because in Conquest, a lot of times there's one deck that you're going to struggle to win with, and there's at least one deck where you're most likely going to find a win. And I think for HCT, that Malagos Druid was actually in a pretty good spot, regardless of the outcome. But even Warlock for Ike is actually a crucial part of winning this match for him, because he's got bad matchups across the board for even Warlock.
I think that is the one he needed to win. And I do think it is, like a slight favorable to Ike in that one, but so much of it pivots on the early threats and how they are handled by HCT. If HCT had not been able to handle that Mountain Giant on turn 3 straight away, that you're looking at a game that ends in Ike's favor. But because he had naturalized, because he had the ramp, even despite the Mojo Master Zihi, the Zihi was forced on Ike's side. It wasn't a play that he was necessarily delighted to make directly on turn 6 there.
Yeah, but I think there was a pivotal point in that matchup where Ike may have been able to survive with the Acidic Swamp Ooze over the Vulgar Homunculus, because he already had a taunt in the way with the Hooked Reaver to protect.
Yeah.
And he had the second Acidic Swamp Ooze to hold on to for Twig, if that were part of HCT's game plan. More power on the board as well. All of those things led me to believe that Acidic Swamp Ooze was the correct play, and that could have been the difference maker.
You did see the line of thinking the turn after, which was the Defile against Malfurion for Poisonous exactly. That was the nod to the Vulgar Homunculus. It stayed in play through that setup that he had.
Yeah, but that's like a one-off card to play around.
Malagos Double Moonfire is a 3-off card to play around.
True, but it's also saving Vulgar Homunculus for a beefed up Spellstone is another thing that you can try and think about.
I see it both ways.
Yeah, it's a really hard thing, and I don't want to call it the wrong play because he did have a plan in mind.
Yeah.
But that's one of those things where we can see both hands, so we know because of that it was the incorrect play.
Yeah. I don't think he can really develop a read in that situation.
He cannot whatsoever, especially after Mojo Master Zihi was played. So
in this
don't
matchup,
fall back for that.
We're looking at pretty much the exact opposite of what we were looking at last time, where HCT really has an uphill battle against this deck. To break it down in simple terms, HCT's Hero Power, which is upgraded thanks to Baku, does one thing a turn. It kills a minion, basically. Ike's Hero Power, which is upgraded by Baku, does 2 things a turn. And when you're doing 2 things a turn and your opponent's doing 1 in an aggro battle that really has few ways to swing the matchup back in your favor, it ends up being a very favorable matchup for Ike.
Yeah, the ways you win this is the Paladin misses 1-drops almost completely. You get all your 1-drops, and you have Tark Reaper to back it up. That's how you win. Or
you have Blood Knight.
You have Blood Knight or Phantom Knives. Like, those are the 2 things. Now, HCT does have a copy of Blood Knight that he's just played. It's a 9/9, but still, one big thing attacking can lose to a lot of small things attacking.
Right.
Because you have to make the tough decision every turn of, well, do I hit him in the face for 9?
Yeah, and this is actually one of the rare situations where Sacred Maul ends up being one of the better ones, is that Ike is able to Divine Shield with Purifier's Maul, so, of course, Sacred Maul being carried by something else in the deck once again, but that'll give all his minions taunt afterwards, and that's actually a pretty major deal when you're staring down a 9/9 against an aggro deck. It means that they are not going to be able to race you. I mean,
good old Sacred Maul.
Seriously, think about like Giggling Inventor and how like destructively powerful it was against Odd Rogue's plan, where they're like, oh my gosh, 4 attacks need to take care of these Annoyatrons. Ike's about to make 5 Annoyatrons, basically.
Yeah.
And HCT recognizes that this is the case and just goes, all right, well, I'm going to race you straight up then. I'm going to put the most attack on board possible and say, you better do something about it. Well, Ike's got something to do about it.
Yeah, and he knows he's not vulnerable to this at all because, as I mentioned, HCT, no fan of knives. Not a popular inclusion in Odd Rogue. I think it would only be if you expected the field to be nearly all Odd Paladins. But HCT is just going to die.
Yeah, I mean, that's the nature of this matchup. If HCT does not have a super lit start that's going to kill every single minion Ike plays, you're usually not going to win.
We just got finished talking about how this matchup plays out, and it's over.
What HCT has brought to the table with, stuff like Odd Rogue That's something that Ike really anticipated showing up in force in this tournament, and it just really wasn't as much as he had anticipated ended up showing up.
Is there any way for him to survive on board?
No. I mean, maybe the Tar Creeper survives for a turn or so. Honestly, I have discounted this point because I'm looking at Divine Favor as the final option for Ike as well. So it's like the idea that he's going to whiff and then also die to a counterattack. I mean, right now, it takes 12 attacks or sources of damage for HCT to even touch Ike. Yeah, that's just not how the game works.
Yeah, I'm counting every which way, and he's like exactly dead no matter how defensive of a play he makes with that Tar Creeper. And Ike very quickly ties up the series 1-1.
A deck that I think is pretty well positioned to get through HCT's lineup, Mid-Range Hunter being the other deck that HCT has left in the lineup. Odd Paladin is typically pretty favored against both of those. So Ike taking a matchup that we very much expected to take, while HCT taking one that's a lot closer, I'd still say the advantage is in HCT's court here.
Yeah, again, the pivotal part of these guys' lineups matching up, I think, is even Warlock from Ike. That's the deck that I'm worried for him, because against Mid-Range Hunter and against Odd Rogue, that deck's going to struggle, I feel. So I can imagine Ike probably going to try and save that for last, maybe get some momentum going on his side to try and get over this hump. But, I mean, right now it's all tied up. Still anyone's game here in the first match of the Tiebreaker Tussle. We're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, more Hearthstone action. Don't go anywhere.
大家好，我是来自 LF 的月影，我是来自中国。我的性格是比较的，可能算是内向，就是如果跟不熟的人的话，会说话比较少，但跟熟人就会比较放得开。我唱歌的话，这个的话就是当你一直输，你可以用唱歌来缓解你的就是那种负面情绪，然后让你接下来的比赛或者是天梯的那种排名的对战中可能会更好。这就算是我自己的爱好吧，就是比较喜欢。然后表演的话也应该不算，就是我可能直播的时候会唱一下歌，就是只是哼一哼，也不会说刻意去唱。
Would you be willing to sing just a small excerpt of a song?
就我比较内向，所以我在镜头前我可能放不开，所以我觉得不太好。对。Listen to the song here in my heart, a melody I stop but can't complete。唱歌一般都是在我直播中，就是我在天梯中上分的时候，如果打的就是有一段时间的连跪，然后会影响我之后的心态嘛，所以我会通过唱歌来缓解我的情绪，不然我会就是一直憋在心里。上一个让我特别开心的事吗？我觉得只有炉石才能会让我特别开心。
I'm kind of cocky. I am very confident how I play. I think I'm one of the best players. Hit him in the face so they have less life is kind of my motto. Although it sounds kind of stupid, it's just something to actually think about in a simple way, right? You have two choices. You could trade or you can go face. If you don't really know what to do, just go face. Man, I'm not perfect, but like, I'm pretty damn close. Having fans that actually care about how you do is a really motivating and feel-good thing. Fans drive players. Hanging out, saying hi in chat, saying, man, you really did great at this tournament, and I enjoyed watching, puts a smile on my face and a motivation to play. So I was born with a bone disease called congenital pseudarthrosis. About 1 in a million people have it. Throughout my life, I've had long periods of time where I can't walk, which has led to 21 surgeries, basically a surgery a year. Video games are just the go-to thing when you can't really do anything. Hearthstone in particular, you just open it up on the iPad, which is really nice in long recovery periods. So Hearthstone has honestly just kind of been there during difficult times. I got two aspects of my life, medical and then gaming. I'm kind of on the up on gaming and the down on the medical, so it's nice to have a little balance out. So getting up on a Hearthstone stage, having a bunch of people watch you seems not as scary as going in for an 8-hour surgery where you might lose your leg coming out of it. I kind of told everyone that I was going to win Worlds this year, so this is the last shot for that. So I don't really have an option to lose here. I got Brian Kibler's Choose Your Champ vote. Everyone who's ever picked has made it to the World Championship, and I don't plan on ending his pick on a loss streak.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Tiebreaker Tussle here at the HCT Winter Championship. Ike said in his interview, losing is not an option, because he kind of told everybody that he's going to win the World Championship, and you can't win the World Championship unless you're there.
Yeah. That's a very simple Ike way to explain it.
Yeah, I know.
You have to win the game if you're going to win the match. You have to win the match if you're going to not lose.
You have to deal at least 30 damage if you want to win the game, unless you're playing a Mechathune deck.
Exceptions to every rule.
Dang it, there's a caveat to that. I messed it up. Well, we're all tied up here. 1-1 going into game number 3, and we got another tough matchup for Ike.
Yeah, this is now Ike's turn to sit in the tough matchup seat and see if he can come out ahead. And HCT is going to be on Odd Rogue with this one. But there has been some pretty significant change to Odd Rogue in this matchup, which admittedly I don't have a ton of experience with since that change, which is Cold Blood, moving up to 2 mana. It means it's no longer in the deck. That oftentimes forces you to adapt the situation, and I think why HCT has chosen to go with so many tech cards that do a lot of different things. So, one of the big ones I look at is Void Ripper. The ability to swap around the attack and health means that you can counteract a turn 2 Doomsayer, and right off the bat, one is drawn. Now, Ike the other day was faced with a decision against Bunny Hopper to play a Doomsayer or to not play a Doomsayer. And when you're facing down a minion already, and it's a small one, much easier to play Doomsayer in that situation. That leaves him susceptible to Void Ripper, excuse me, generating a massive advantage against him. However, in this particular board state, I think that with Mountain Giant in hand and the fact that he's not facing quite as aggressive as the deck that Bunny Hopper was playing, the Tempo Rogue, he should be looking to use Mountain Giant and counter pressure the opponent. That's, of course, my opinion on it. I don't think that there's a way to state that as, fact or fiction or what have you. But, even something as simple as Ooze into Twilight Drake looking really appealing, and even now just with the Vulgar Homunculus, I think a lot of strong options. But here, just going with Doomsayer, this is going to get punished hard. Yeah, I actually love the counter pressure plan because of the fact that Rogue did lose Cold Blood. I think that that's a pretty big deal in the I stuck a minion, so I'm going to punish you department. And you can go for counterattack pressure, especially with the Vulgar Homunculus drawn. I thought that would have been a great situation to tap again, go for Mountain Giant, follow that up with blowing up the dagger, and setting a Vulgar Homunculus in its place. Now, the difference to that is the times that Doomsayer succeeds, your opponent's not always going to have a Void Ripper. You end up with a pretty massive advantage as a result of it. Yeah. The thing about it is that I'm just not sure that that is stronger when it, overall, considering the failure rate when it happens, where you actually end up in the match. And now Blood Knight to start adding more pressure here. And HCT actually going to kill this Twilight Drake. I honestly like this because otherwise, if he just goes chips all the damage to base there, 1, turns on Hooked Reaver, 2, there's got to be a Defile on that board somewhere. And so he doesn't want to risk his board. He'd rather have one big threat as opposed to a big threat with a bunch of medium threats while letting your opponent also have a medium threat. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, too. He said his Fungal Mancer is a follow-up. If he starts running out of gas, he's got Myra's Unstable Element to compound that issue. So I think the play is extremely justified, given that sense. But now, faced with the decision of, do you want to try to get a Vicious Fledgling online, or do you just want to get the Fungal Mancer payoff, is the next one for HCT. I think Fungal Mancer payoff much better. If you Vicious Fledgling, no matter which way you trading. Wow. Now that trade, that one looks a little bit more suspect to me. You still have the same Hooked Reaver problem, but I don't know. That's an interesting couple of trades that HCT's taken here. I understand the first one. The second one, though, feels like it's time for some damage. And Ike, with picking up Spellstone and having double Homunculus to back this up, he's going to really have his life total protected. And HCT, you know, pretty much a blessing that he's got Myra's Unstable Element at this point. And I think that's probably the reason that he's playing it as he is because he's got Myra's Unstable Element. I think without that, you'd see a lot more damage ship face.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you in that situation. Cold Blood becoming an even cost card did affect the amount of from-hand burst you can pick up with Myra's. That's one thing you have to keep in mind. He's already used a Sousey deckhand, so he's got Leroy, Sousey, and Double Deadly as burst from hand.
And this is the thing right here, is now HCT probably is not even trading over this Tar Creeper. I'm sorry, the Vicious Homunculus. Vulgar Homunculus. Why do I keep calling this the wrong thing? I'm looking at Vicious Fledgling, I'm looking at Tar Creeper, losing my mind. He's probably not trading over this with the Blood Knight because he wants to keep that healthy from a Hellfire. If he trades over here, Hellfire is one of the easiest plays in the world for Ike at that point. It's probably just Tar Creeper Dire Maul past the turn. But I'm wrong.
Well, this plays around Spellstone more. How about that?
It definitely does.
Because Spellstone's kind of awkward here because you leave a bunch of power left on the board and your follow-up is quite poor. But honestly, I don't think Ike has an option. 8 damage just takes care of the Hooked Reaver by itself.
Well, that's really kind of what I'm looking at, right? Is that HCT's low on cards at this point, and the Hooked Reaver's vulnerable to Vilespine Slayer later on, where right now HCT would have to have a 1 cost card plus a Vilespine Slayer in order to take care of Hooked Reaver, where it just challenges the 8-2 straight up. And so as weird as it sounds, something along the lines of like double Acidic Swamp Ooze into Sun Fury Protector, or like Hooked Reaver Acidic Swamp Ooze, to me is a stronger play in the overall context of it, because then you get to follow up with Spellstone when your opponent makes an aggressive push.
I could see that. Yeah, that's actually a good point.
He has to find a way to pressure.
If you think about both Spellstone and Hooked Reaver dealing with Blood Knight,
they do about the same thing.
They do about the same thing, but having the Spellstone, well, he knows that's happening. That's a guarantee. Now he has to decide between Hooked Reaver and Spellstone.
Don't mind the Spellstone at all. The thing that this does, though, is it makes that Hooked Reaver probably stay in your hand for a little bit longer.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's a pretty big draw, too. I mean, that's a lot of damage that gets pushed as a result of that Void Ripper. But, you know, the thing I'm wondering for HCT is, did he read this debate from Ike, you know, possibly as a hand read, where you're like, my opponent's at 15, they're hesitating on Spellstone, maybe they have a Hooked Reaver. And so as a result, I think HCT just chooses to dagger up Vicious Fledgling, pushes damage, and then when he sees Hooked Reaver, use the Void Ripper to have that Tar Creeper punch through that very easily.
Yeah. All he picked up, not very good in this situation.
Also, there was some merit there, I think, for HCT maybe not pushing one of those damages, and I think that the read that HCT came to is that there just wasn't Hooked Reaver in hand. Because pushing Ike to a spot where he can tap to 15 Hooked Reaver and then play another 2-cost card, I think is, you know, pretty hurtful in this spot. Just not sure that it's going to end up mattering in this one. HCT with the second Void Ripper here, it's just such a big advantage he's going to get from being able to connect with Flappy Bird.
Yeah, HCT can put Ike very low in this scenario. With these sequence of trades, Tar Creeper was so good with Void Ripper.
Wind Fury picked up.
+1/+1.
Holy moly.
Doesn't protect it from Hellfire, but
I mean,
Ike is dead to Hellfire.
The 4 damage protects him from Hellfire.
Yeah, and he is dead on board to Lich King, unless you just trades into this Acidic Swamp Ooze. Best ever happened. Shuts off the life tap, and Ike looks to be very dead.
Yep.
Lich King, he's dead. Dread Infernal, Sun Fury Protector, trade over 3/3, he's dead.
He does have a Defile here, but he's dead. Gotta play Dread Infernal.
Yeah, dead on board. Every play leaves him dead on board. Can't life tap to try and find something to get him out of it. It's so hard to stabilize as even Warlock against Odd Rogue. Especially the way Yueying has built his lineup with double Void Ripper. He basically checks Ike every step of the way.
Indeed.
That means Yueying...
That Void Ripper on turn 3. Yueying included 2 copies of those when that card had largely rotated completely out of the deck for some amount of time. The lack of Cold Bloods, though, has given Yueying strength of options over strength of immediate damage and reach. In this situation, the Void Ripper was reach, and so Ike now faced with fighting off against the mid-range Hunter with even Warlock and with the Zarek Cloning Gallery Priest that he has in his own. So one matchup that I think is pretty reasonable for him, one matchup that I think is quite difficult.
Mid-range Hunter is just so good. It's very hard to come up with a situation in your head where he can beat it twice in a row with the decks that he has remaining.
Well, even Warlock does have, you know, a lot of game against it in the event that Yueying does not find, you know, timely removal for big threats. You know, say Crackling Razor Maw doesn't find +3 attack or a poisonous. Say Hunter's Mark isn't anywhere to be found. Those kinds of situations are the ones that I can win. And then honestly, you're starting to see part of the reason why I think even Warlock's struggling so much is that when it has coin, it has so many different directions, and they all have, you know, pretty much even play on your opponent's side of, you know, which one punishes them and which one doesn't. All those cards are in your opponent's deck in the same numbers. And so you don't have a strong read on it, and it largely comes down to, you know, a bit of a guessing game. You want to be going first, and you want to be driving the action yourself.
Right off the bat, Yueying looking like he has a great start. And this matchup specifically is kind of the story we've been telling across like the pre-show in the past 3 days. Mid-range Hunter having a ton of success, and even Warlock, well, Warlock in general outside of Jingzhou, struggling.
It feels like that's been through playoffs as
Yeah,
well.
It does. Well, it was Secret Hunter during playoffs, but
Ike does have the kind of start that I love to
That's what I
have
was
against this
gonna
deck, though. I mean, this is Life Tap on 1 into Doomsayer versus the Dire Maul, into Life Tap on 3 and play a thing. One of the key cards that Ike is looking for right now is Spellstone, and then another key one is going to be anything big that can attack stuff a lot.
Twilight Drake.
That's probably the best one. That one's a little slow.
A little bit slower.
The thing about it is if you don't play Doomsayer, you get to see Yueying's Crackling Razor Maw, which may mean you never play the Doomsayer. If you play the Doomsayer right now, Yueying has to consider, do I risk this Crackling Razor Maw? Can I win without risking the Crackling Razor Maw? I have often found that when I'm in the situation of Hunter and my opponent plays the Doomsayer, I like to risk the Crackling Razor Maw because the payoff you get is extreme. Passing on this turn is going to give Ike some amount of initiative, and that's the last thing you want to happen.
Yes.
Do you need this Crackling Razor Maw to win the game? Because I don't think you do. Unless it's right here anyway.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Unless you get poisonous. So I need 2-for-1 with that Dire Maul. And you push more damage the next turn. You hold on to initiative.
Yeah, you effectively Void Ripper the Doomsayer.
Yeah, it also has the added benefit of, hey, you can get Death Rattle, summon a couple plants, and then you're not ceding full initiative over to Ike. Or the added bonus of +3 attack, and then you get to push 4 damage.
We go with Steady Shot. And I think that's a very welcome sight from Ike. Just think about it. Put yourself in Ike's shoes. If your opponent plays Crackling Razor Maw there, think of the feeling you get. Oh, please not poisonous. That's the first thought. And now a second Doomsayer picked up. So now Ike has a very interesting turn where the Doomsayer will act as a complete delay to Yueying's further development.
Doomsayer loses a lot of value as the game goes on, because in the later stages of the game, it's you saying, I need to find a way to come back. I need to hide this Doomsayer, hope it goes off, and then play something big behind it. One Scavenging Hyena already in hand.
This is one of the reasons I both love and hate tracking, is I love it because it provides you with a very detailed option that impacts the game a lot. But you know, the other problem is that it provides me with a very detailed option that impacts the game a lot. Not always positively so.
That's why I don't play tracking.
I don't play tracking because I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
Makes sense to me.
Spring Paw is the choice from HCT. So a Timberwolf and a Scavenging Hyena discarded.
Oh, wow. That's a big draw for Ike. Spellstone, one of the most vital cards for staying just alive right after a Hunter player makes a big push. In this instance, HCT, who hasn't had that push yet, has still managed to chip Ike down to 17 life. That Spellstone is going to be vital for Ike eventually trying to deliver a race situation. With Dread Infernal in hand as well, I think that he has a double potential to make something good happen here.
HCT finds a decent way to handle this Vulgar Homunculus and stick something on the board with the Wolf. And that is a second Spellstone. So great stabilization.
Yeah, I think Ike needs to life tap here. He has one, perfect draw, I'd say, with Hooked Reaver in this instance.
Yeah.
And even if you don't hit that, you have Mountain Giant. And there's only one copy of of Hunter's Mark in HCT's deck. And so those are really the two big factors to consider. How much is the extra life worth? How much is the perfect draw worth? And Blood Reaver Gul'dan drawn, Ike now has some semblance of an endgame plan as well. If he needs to play pure defense, that's available.
Yeah. But there's the bonus for HCT of holding on to this Crackling Razor Maw, because now he has an option of taking out this Mountain Giant or pushing a good amount of damage. And HCT may be able to make the read that Hooked Reaver is not in hand, because with 4 mana, I decided to play the Mountain Giant. But there's also the argument that he may just be trying to trade with this Mountain Giant, playing Hooked Reaver post to protect it. Going for Poisonous.
Get aggressive, and I like it.
Oh, +3 attack. He can deal with this Mountain Giant and land a Scavenging Hyena.
Yeah, I'm curious about dealing with the Mountain Giant personally. I think I actually still like pushing in that instance. I think I would trade the 4 damage in. I think I might push the rest, but he wants to protect the Scavenging Hyena.
So the play that just stands out, probably to everybody, is Spellstone Ooze.
I was thinking Spellstone Defile, personally.
The smaller Spellstone Defile. Okay, yeah, that works.
I'm not really, honestly, too terribly sure. I could see Hellfire Defile as well.
I was thinking Hellfire Defile, but what Ike has to do here
you can't do that, actually. If you Hellfire Defile, you will buff with the Hyena. You have to Defile and then Hellfire.
Yeah.
But it buffs up both Spellstones, and that's a big benefit.
Ike has to plan for his future turns, is the thing. He has to make sure that he has something in hand to deal with everything until Blood River Gul'dan's going to come out.
HCT's hand is getting awfully good.
I think it was awfully good from the start.
And now Ike faced with a Spellstone Ooze turn. At this point, I'm actually not sure life tapping is a realistic option, just because you have enough cards in hand, I think, to fight through and get to Gul'dan, but you need demons in the pool as well. So it's like this turn 7, you're looking at Spellstone plus Acidic Swamp Ooze, and the next turn you're looking at a Dread Infernal plus Taunt. Turn 9's the only one that's got to fill up, and he's already got Spellstone for that.
Yeah. Unleash, not the best card, but Baited Arrow.
Yeah,
very good.
That's an issue because that starts to strip away Ike's Dread Infernal turn. That's why I think he used the smaller Spellstone, is because he anticipated something like this. That's a dead draw. And Ike is getting pushed out of the game here. I mean, this is looking really rough.
He's going to have to take a big risk at some point.
Just don't know when that is.
And the big risk either has to come this turn or on turn 9.
There's so many just disastrous things that can happen right now. My instinct is on a Spellstone and Acidic Swamp Ooze, but I'm just not certain.
I honestly think that maybe the smaller Spellstone was a mistake last turn, because you outlined a plan. You outlined a Dread Infernal, Sunfear Protector into Spellstone, do something else into Blood River Gul'dan.
Yeah.
If he had done that, he would have netted 2 extra life last turn, and because of the Dread Infernal, that other Spellstone would have been upgraded to a greater as well.
Yeah.
And he may have been more free to play Dread Infernal Sunfury Protector this turn.
I think just the major issue with that is that if you get disrupted, it strips away the Dread Infernal turn. And what Ike was accounting for with the 2 less life was that you draw exactly Hooked Reaver off of that. I believe, if I remember correctly, the life total lined up to where if he had drawn Hooked Reaver exactly, he would not have had to do anything for that to matter on the 5 health Spellstone. I mean, it's a lot of tiny things that Ike is accounting for, and a lot of it is largely drawing the right card. So I like the way it's been done because, you know, both Spellstones are likely going to have to be used before that point anyway. It requires you to have a pretty perfect situation, I think, to not have it be the case. And that seems like a big pickup to me as well, where HCT now has options to trade over the Swamp Ooze and just have enough little threats on board that he can just chip Ike down to such a low life total. And that likely to be the turn 9 play. And the reason why is because going into Ike's turn 10, he would like to disrupt that by presenting a wide board position.
This play pushed probably the least amount of damage out of all the plays available to HCT this turn. I was expecting him to kind of go in here a little bit.
Yeah, well, I think that going in signals is really where my head's at. And so I think that playing it in a way to where you're able to hedge against Defile, you're able to deal damage, and you're able to have a surprise with the Unleash the Hounds is potentially a bigger deal.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, Ike, his play is, you know, borderline the worst.
I think right here his play has to be Dread Infernal into Blood Reaver Gul'dan and hope that that's enough to survive, but I don't think it will be. He's going to take 6 coming out of the Dread Infernal turn.
Yeah, my instinct here is that if you're in Ike's shoes, you have to life tap.
What are you looking for? Hooked Reaver specifically?
I think you're looking for Defile specifically.
Okay, Defile, Dread Infernal would be a board clear. Spellbreaker, Hooked Reaver.
Sunfury Protector is a pretty big pickup off that as well.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, maybe if you pick up a Shroom Brewer even, you can justify 2 threats. You Spellbreaker off the Timberwolf buff, and then you get to Shroom Brewer yourself back 4 health. There's a number of just horrific-looking draws is, you know, part of the problem with that. And this is why it's such a tough matchup. You constantly get pushed around by the minor disruption that HCT can bring to the table here.
Yeah, if he taps, he dies to a kill command. If he doesn't pick up one of those things that you had mentioned.
And that's the issue. It's
if
a
he
tough call
doesn't
either
tap,
way.
yeah, so he's dead to a single kill command here. 6 on board, it would be 11 from kill command. But there's not one picked up.
Yeah, as it stands, this might work out for Ike, which is very surprising given, you know, what HCT's done so far. I mean, he basically has just played minions on curve. He has no way to follow this up. No Tundra Rhino in hand. There's not another tracking to use. No Crackling Razor Maul. It's just Savannah Highmane and create a looming board presence.
I think if HCT ships 6 damage to face here, that it's game.
What if he ships 8?
All he needed was 6. Because Blood River Gul'dan will summon a Bogar Homunculus. He'll go up to 9.
Yeah,
and
no
then
option.
Flanking Strike, Spring Paw. Yeah.
Ike needed the liberty to be able to use that Dread Infernal on curve and just didn't have it. So the Homunculus gets pushed through. Flanking Strike in 1, 8, 9, 10 on board. HCT moving up. Now 1 match away from earning a World Championship qualification spot. And doing so in a pretty good looking fashion. Ike is going to move down to that lower portion of the bracket where he will face the loser of those 2 for his shot to earn that spot.
Yeah. Pretty decisive victory over Ike outside of the crazy Odd Paladin versus Odd Rogue matchup where he just didn't stand a chance. All of the 3 rest of the game just felt like Ike was on the back foot the every step of the way.
Yeah, I mean, you have to look at game number 1 as probably being the most vital game in that position, where Ike had set up enough position to be able to take that game very easily. It required HCT to have exactly Malagos, Moonfire in a 6-card hand. Absolutely had to have that combination or the game was going to end in Ike's favor. And so much of that boiled down to the early Mountain Giant being checked by a Naturalize. Very wise keep from HCT in that situation. But overall, a lot of the matchups just in this one boil down to how vital they are to be winning. There's some matchups you could lose them and not really think much of it. Picture the Odd Rogue versus Odd Paladin. You lose that matchup, you're not really too worried about it in the Odd Rogue's position. But the close ones, the ones that are, on the razor's edge where one particular card makes the difference, those are the ones that you need to be picking up.
Yeah, and that was also a pivotal matchup because of how much we knew even Warlock was going to struggle throughout the rest of the matchups. We just saw how tough of a time it had against Odd Rogue and even Mid-Range Hunter. We say it all the time as casters. It's one of our casterisms. When both players are trying to kill one person, the Even Warlock trying to damage themselves, the Hunter trying to damage the Even Warlock, that's only going to go one way, and that's with the Even Warlock most of the time falling. He had a couple close spots, but ultimately fell. Now, we do want to point out that Ike is not out of it yet. He'll still have a match for World Championship qualification. The difference is now HCT has 2 chances to qualify for the World Championship,
right?
Whereas Ike only has 1 left remaining. So that's what that match was effectively for. You can see how these groups are shaping up. Definition will play HCT for the first spot, and then the loser of that will go on to Ike to have a second chance to qualify for the World Championship.
Yeah.
So I kind of just have to shake that one off and reset because he's going to be playing pretty much the match of his life in a few hours.
Yes, and it seems like that has been a lot of the theme of this tournament for Ike in particular, and the group that he had gotten and chose to bring Odd Paladin with was not very favorable for him. I would say it was at best slightly favored, and now the players that are in this spot, the ones who are capable of earning those World Championship qualification spots due to previous already qualified players earning theirs and getting through the top 4 and pushing those slots down, he still is facing off against a similarly styled group that is happening in that position. It's the players who, in some respects, paid attention to Odd Paladin.
Yeah, and it kind of funny that Odd Paladin isn't even a lot of times the deck that he's worried about in most of his series. It has been Even Warlock, and that's been the case for almost every player that's brought the deck.
Yeah.
It just has struggled a lot, and we can take a second to look at that top side of that bracket, which will be Definition versus HCT, which is a pretty interesting matchup in itself. Definition had one of the most impressive group performances that we saw. HCT struggled a little bit more than Definition, but still came out on top. And they both have very unique lineups. Definition's got like a control lineup. He has Odd Warrior, which in an environment where there's like half the players in the field bringing anti-control. I just don't know how he did it up until this point. But HCT has that mix. He's got a mix of aggressive decks, control decks, and anti-control decks. Malagos Druid, Control Priest, Odd Rogue. It's kind of an interesting lineup to bring to a tournament like this, but he said himself, he brought what he thinks is good, and he brought what he's comfortable with.
Yes,
and
I think
sometimes
2 very important factors.
Yeah, and we had this conversation with so many players. Every time they come to the championship, what do you value more? Do you value just straight up statistics? Do you value being comfortable? Or do you value just bringing the best stuff, the highest win rate decks possible in order to try and put yourself in the best position for any given tournament? And we get different answers all the time.
Definitely do. Kind of talk about that storyboard thing overhead, too. Definition, the last remaining Korean representative that could possibly make that slot.
Yeah.
He's got 2 tries, and if he doesn't get it, this will be the first World Championships where there is no player from South Korea.
So a lot still riding on the final 2 matches for the Tiebreaker Tussle. We still got 2 world spots to give away. It's going to be between Ike, HCT, and Definition. Who is going to take those? But 1 match in the books, 2 more to go. So plenty more Hearthstone action coming at you right after this.